That's good. This recording will be uploaded on YouTube on our channel Evocurement. You can search on YouTube and follow us and subscribe to us. And previously, we have uploaded 2 videos on this channel on revision of L4M3 and L4M1. You may rewatch them on our channel. So today we review on L4M5, and this module is known as commercial negotiation. As I said previously, we have a lot of requests on this module. We have a lot of requests on this module. I don't still understand why, but previously in the previous exam series in May, we also have a revision on L4M5. Why people have a lot of concern on L4M5. But anyway, every time I improve a bit of my revision, and I hope that it will help you to learn and prepare for your exam. As usual, before we start the revision, I would like to review on the structure of the module. L4M5 has 3 chapters, and each chapter has a different set problem. As you know, L4M5 is an OR module, so there will be 60 questions in the exam, and each question may ask randomly any topic within the study guide. So in OR exams, questions tend to be very wide, has a very wide range of topics, and but normally in during the exam, they often ask only some area more than the other. Some areas are more commonly asked than the other. So we have a list of focus area or common area to be asked in the exam. You may see that post on our website at en.evocurement.edu.vn. And here I list some key area of L4M5. You may see the main topics here. Here is just some indicative points. In the chapter one is an introduction to the problem, introduction to the negotiation. In chapter 1, we have 3 major topics: the role of negotiation, when negotiation is occurred in procurement and supply cycle. 2 main approaches in negotiation, including interpretive and distributive style. The role of power in negotiation also. In chapter 2, we look into how to prepare for negotiation. First, into how cost and price will be analyzed before engaging in a negotiation. Also, we review on macro and microeconomics factor which impact on the negotiation. And also, we also look at other areas of negotiation, like the method of negotiation via phone, by email, by video conferencing, or face-to-face. The choose of place and time for negotiation, and other preparation like the variable or changeable of any negotiation. The third chapter focuses on how a negotiation happens. First one would be, the first topic will be on the stages in negotiation, and the questions can be used in negotiation. Otherwise, we also look at other techniques and tactics of negotiation, like push and pull techniques, like hardball tactics, and other influencing techniques in negotiation. Finally, we have a small part of the book on reflection and lesson learned from a negotiation. I'm glad to see there are 19 participants attending the revision right now. It's a record from my view. Okay, now we go into the revision. In chapter 1, I list here the key area we need to review. The first one is not very long or difficult. It's about the role or the time we negotiate in procurement and supply cycle. As you know, procurement supply cycle of SIP has 13 stages, and negotiation may occur during the defining needs or during post-contract award. During contract award and post-contract award. During defining needs, we may need to negotiate with our stakeholders, with internal stakeholders, to define correct needs and the specification for the items. Then we prepare for documentation and may run some tender or request for quotation to get the best supplier. And after getting the best supplier, we may need to negotiate with them. After which this negotiation is called as post-tender negotiation. And issue may be discussed here, like the price, the contract terms, the specification, the delivery note, delivery mode, and other factors. And during the performance of the contract, if the supplier need to improve their performance, or you may want to address some issue in the relationship, then you may have a negotiation with the supplier, with the current supplier. That's a quick recap on when the negotiation occurs in procurement cycle. And the second topic is more important, the major approaches into negotiation, integrative and distributive. Integrative and distributive are two major approaches into negotiation, and this topic has a lot of questions in the exam. The question tend to focus on the features of each style of negotiation. And during this revision, I only have some quick recap on the topic, like the style we approach here. In integrative, we strive to get the best benefit for both parties, and to do that, we need to have some skills like listening, or we may need to generate a creative solution for both parties. And as visualization in the book, integrative approach is also known as expanding the pie, and we have to deliver the benefits for both parties. On the other hand, distributive approach to negotiation is also known as win-lose approach. And in this approach, instead of achieving a win-win solution, we try to leverage the situation and take more from the other party. In distributive, there must be a winner and a loser. During the exam, question here tend to be about the feature, like what skills are needed for integrative approach, or what skills are needed for distributive, or what are the feature or characteristic or distinctive features of integrative or distributive approach. format of the question may be simple multiple choice or may have combination of 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have to just select 2 from them. But anyway, the questions here are not very hard. And by instant, you may choose the correct answer. However, you should not be too complacent on this type question. And the key here is to read carefully the question and select the correct answer. Remember to read carefully the question. A small part of integrative and distributive approach to negotiation is conflict resolution style. This model is based on the research of two psychologists, Thomas and Kinman. They see that every person in their situation may choose a style to resolve their conflict. They list five styles of conflict resolution. Avoiding here means that the party, instead of facing and solving the situation, they withdrawing from that and try to avoid any conflict possible. Accommodating. Accommodating means that the party here want to accommodate, want to indulge the needs of the other party, and they intend to neglect their own needs. On the other hand, competing is exactly the opposite. So the party here try to take the best of their position and ignore the needs of the other. Compromising is meaning split the difference, and the party here compromise to compromise the benefit. They get some and give some. And finally, collaborating is the mode of conflict resolution that achieving the win-win situation for both parties, like integrative approach. And all these 5 styles are based on 2 axes of a matrix. The first axis is assertiveness, how a party is assertive, is determining to their own needs. And the other axis is cooperativeness, the ability to focus on the other needs. For example, you may see here, if the assertiveness is low and cooperativeness is low, then the party tend to avoid the situation. Why I have to say about this model here? Because there's some questions, not too many, but there are some questions on this slide, on this model. And the question may ask you to identify the correct style by giving some indicator in some scenario. And this model is not very hard to learn by heart, so I hope that you may see it at once, at least one, and remember it. I come back a bit into the chapter. Another part of the book is on principled and pragmatic approach to negotiation. This is very interesting, but I see that there's no question on this topic. Principled and pragmatic approach to negotiation is similar to integrative and distributive. Principle like integrative. They try to have some creative solution and with some some principle like focus on the position, not on the interest, and try to be creative into during the negotiation. On the other hand, pragmatic approach is like distributed, try to get the best benefit from the other party, etc. By the way, this is very interesting to read, but according to my experience, I see no question on this topic, on this area. And we should move into topic like partner, Zoper, and MIL. Partner is a abbreviation to the best alternative to negotiate the agreement. Is the solution. Is the solution when we see that the negotiation may fail. Why do we need partner here? Partner tend to increase the power of the party. If you are confident that you have a plan B, then you may not need to agree to the negotiation to the other party anyway. You may not, you don't have the pressure to agree with them at any cost. So if we have clear partner, then we will have greater power and greater confidence in the negotiation. In the exam, partner questions tend to focus on yes and no, like where we are preparing for this negotiation and we prepare a partner like this, then is this a correct action to do? The format is like that. Or in the other hand, there are some harder questions. There are some harder questions. They ask about what is a partner in this situation, in this scenario. Like this person, this buyer is preparing for negotiation with a supplier and the negotiation is not going well. So that what is a partner of the negotiation? That type of question is harder because you have to analyze and think about what would be the best alternative here. And in the other hand, we have some other abbreviation, other acronym, sorry, not that, other abbreviation and acronym, yes. For in negotiation, we have ZOPA, Zone of Possible Agreement. ZOPA is the overlap between the target supplier and the buyer. You may see here, the buyer may want to purchase at low price and he has a range of options. And on the other hand, the buyer want to sell at the high price and he also have a range of options. And Zoper is possible when the range of buyer and the range of supplier overlap, some part of buyer and some part of supplier overlap. And by setting target, the party may know that they may have some Zoper, or if there are no Zoper, the possible agreement is very unlikely, except they agree to concede their interest. Another abbreviation here is MIL. This is the acronym for must, intent, and like. mass, intent, and like. This is an acronym for setting target. Instead of setting one target, you should setting a range of possible target. Mass is like the highest or lowest possible option you may have. Like is what is your favorite range or favorite target, and intent here is like you the most realistic one. Intent is the most realistic. So before going into negotiation, you have to prepare for it. And preparing means one of the tasks for preparing is setting target. And MIL is a good acronym to remind you how to setting target. Okay, that's all about Bettner, MIL, and Zoper. We move into the next topic on the role power in negotiation. This topic is very important and may have many questions in the exam. In negotiation, we as buyer and we negotiate with the supplier, or to be more exact, we are the person from an organization who is negotiating with other person who representing other organization. So in negotiations, there are two types of power here. First one is personal power, and the second one is organizational power. How do we know? What do we know about personal and organizational power? First, I want to say about organizational power. You may have known the butterfly force model, which is taught in L4M2. This model is very important. It helps you to determine the power of the parties during negotiation. And in this context, you SIP suggests you to use this model to analyze the balance of power between the supplier and the buyer. The buyer here and supplier here. There are some factors that may increase or decrease this balance of power. Like if the number of buyer is plenty and they are unconcentrated, then the supplier will have more power. Or like the seller is offering something very differentiated and they are monopoly in that product, then the power of the supplier is very strong. And that is the balance of power between supplier and buyer. In the exam, the question may ask you about the factors which may increase or decrease the balance of power toward the supplier or the buyer. You may see some options like differentiate the product or the concentration of the buyer or of the supplier, or something like the threat of forward or backward integration, etc. And if you want to answer this question correctly, I would advise you to come back to F1.2 and read at 2.2. Okay, that's about organizational power. We also have questions on personal power, and in negotiation, personal power also play a role. The image here show 5 types of personal power: legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and reference. Legitimate power, you may have legitimate power when you are the correct, when you have a high authority within an organization, like you are the boss, you are the procurement director of that company, of that organization. And then when you negotiate with like the sales representative of the supplier, they may respect you and may fear you, possibly. Reward power is a type of that have the ability to reward the other party for doing something well. You may leverage this type of by promising some reward to the supplier. And opposite to reward power is coercive power. Coercive power is the ability to threaten and punish the other party for doing what you are not wanting them to do. Expert power is type of the people who has expertise or has technical knowledge. Like when you are negotiating with the supplier, you may hire some people with IT background, and that people will, that person will have some insight into the technicality of the product, and they may have respect and from the supplier. Reference power is a type of power that is also known as charisma, which is very the person who has this power is kind of attractive and kind of attractive, and everyone wants to know him. Everyone wants to play with him and be friends with him. In the exam, they may have some scenario and asking you the type of personal power that a player, that the character in that scenario is using. That is the most common type question here. And to answer this type of question well, you need to understand what each type of power is and what is its name. Actually, this model is very famous and it's not very hard to remember them. So prepare for the exam by reading the book on this topic. And finally, in chapter 1, we have some matrices to remember. Most famously is quadratic matrix. I think that I don't need to say more about this because it is repeatedly mentioned in level 4 diploma again and again in other modules. So you have to learn by heart this model and know exactly what each quadrant is and how to deal with that quadrant. On the other hand, we also have other matrix, a supplier preferencing model. This is the model which is focused on the perspective of the supplier instead of from the buyer view. This model also have 4 quadrants based on the attractiveness of the buyer and relative value of the buyer to the supplier. And this model is not mentioned in other model except L4M6. So if you want to know more, you may visit L4M6 in chapter 1, and it has very detailed description of this model. Here, here, SIP tend to focus on how to increase the value or increase the attractiveness of the supplier. If you read on page 4 in the book, you may see that they have some suggestion for increasing the value or the attractiveness of the buyer to supplier. For example, if the buyer is nice to the supplier, the solution here is to increase the attractiveness by having some friendliness toward the supplier, or helping the supplier to solve their problems, or helping the supplier to access it to access to other customer like our competitor or our subsidiary. If the relative value of the buyer is low to the supplier, you may want to pooling your needs by buying consortium or something like consolidating the needs from other departments, so that we have bigger extent and bigger contract to attract more suppliers. The question here tend to be scenario, and they ask you solution to increase the attractiveness or the value of the buyer in the perspective of the supplier. That's all about chapter 1. That's all about chapter 1. We finished chapter 1. Chapter 1 is quite short and easy to understand, very comprehensible. But it also has many questions. I hope that you don't drop the mark here. Remember to read the question carefully, and read carefully the options before choosing. But you need to balance your time. If you have some questions that you feel is very the wording is very unclear, then you should flag it and come back later. You should when doing the exam, you should go through the questions at least once. And if you have more time, you may revisit the flag question. Chapter 2 and chapter 2 is harder because it has some technical knowledge of cost price analysis and macro as well as macroeconomic. In chapter 2, we look at costing, macroeconomic, and other issues like variable, place, time, and method for negotiation. Before talking about costing and pricing, I'd like to explain how the price in market economic works. The price in market economic is a result of three forces. First is supply, second the demand, supply and demand, and third, when we have supply and demand, but the price is also affected by the cost of production. For example, the price of egg in the market may increase or decrease due to the force of supply and demand. In this summer, I don't want to eat. Many people don't want to eat egg, so the demand crash and the price of the egg will likely to decrease. But during some season, the supply and demand is stable, but the cost production, like the feed for the chicken, is rising, so the egg is also rising, or the chicken is experiencing some kind of pandemic, some kind of influenza. So they are dying en masse, and the supply of the egg is crashing. So the price of the eggs is rising. Or sometimes the not the population of chicken nor the demand is crashing, but the cost production, like the feed for the chicken, is rising due to some reasons. So the price of egg also rising. First, I would like to remind you of some key definitions of cost and price analysis. You may see this in L4M2, and in L4M5 they are repeated. We also have to look at fixed cost, variable cost, and how to analyze the break-even point. And I summarize the knowledge here. I summarize them here. And I don't need to talk about it anymore. In the exam, there are some questions on these basic definition. You may ask you what is a fixed cost in this scenario, and what would be the variable cost in that scenario. And sometimes they have a question on the difference between margin and markup. You see here, margin is the ratio between profit and the selling price of a unit, and markup is the ratio between profit and the cost, or more actually just the cost, not the variable cost. Markup is a ratio between profit and the cost of a unit. There is some question on calculating margin markup. Don't worry. If you know the formula, you have a calculator at the top of the screen. Don't worry about some calculating question. You always have calculator on the screen, so it's very convenient. And the only job you need to do is remember the formula for calculating margin and markup, and some definition of fixed cost, also as well as variable cost. The major part of L4M5 in chapter 2 in part 2.1 is the different method of costing. They introduce 3 costing methods, which include absorption costing, marginal costing, and activity-based costing. Some students does not understand fully about this costing method, and they may have difficulties in doing the exam regarding the question of these methods. Absorption costing is also known as the traditional way costing method. When calculating the price for selling an unit, we calculate the variable cost, like what is a material needed needed to produce that product, and the number of hours of labor to produce that product. Then after deciding the variable cost, they add some fixed cost on the top of this. How do we know about this assigned fixed cost? It can be estimated by dividing the total fixed cost on the number of products produced during that period. Like when we have 10,000 products produced in 1 year or in 1 month, then we calculate the total fixed cost in that month, like administrative costs and rental and other overheads. We dividing the total overheads on the total number of product produced in that month. Then we may have the fixed cost here. And we add the assigned fixed cost on the top of variable cost. And total of them will be the cost of the product. And after that, we add some kind of markup based on the percentage of the cost on top of this, on top of the costing. Then all of them is the total price of the total unit price, the total unit price of that product. This method is quite simple and very easy to use, but it has major setback at assigning fixed cost. We don't actually know the fixed cost until the accountant bring all the costs in, and it often has some kind of lag, some kind of delay between deciding the cost and knowing the actual cost. So absorption costing has some setback, but it's very simple. And but this type of costing is very arbitrary. You decide the assigned fixed cost without knowing exactly what would be included in overheads. So so they suggest some other method like activity-based costing. We will come back to this later. On the other hand, we have marginal costing. This way costing is very commonly made in the context of procurement. You may see the supplier quote like, if we purchase 500 units, then the price would be $100 per unit. And if we purchase more, the price would be only $750 per unit. So what is the difference? What is the difference in that unit price? We can safely estimate that the reduced price here, the reduce in unit price here, maybe the fixed cost on the top of the variable cost, because the supplier is reaching economy of scale, so they discount some ratio, some aspect, some part of the cost due to they have reached the economy scale. So the lower price will better representing the variable cost of the product. So from that, we can estimate the fixed cost and the variable cost of the supplier. That is very insightful and helpful information for negotiation. And marginal costing and absorption costing is very similar, and we can conclude the costing from look at the product or look at the quotation of the supplier. But they have some setback, like as I said before, absorption costing is very arbitrary, and you may not know exactly what the fixed cost is. Even the supplier may not know exactly what their fixed cost is. So you may need other very advanced method. It called activity-based costing, or may known as ABC. Instead of assigning fixed costs on the top of variable costs, in ABC, the producer estimates the fixed cost by estimating the activity it going through in the production. And each activity will incur cost, and the producer of that product will will observe and decide the cost of each activity based on accounting. This method is very advanced and require a lot of information as well as observation, and it's quite hard to perform. But it is more it's more exact and less arbitrary than absorption costing. Of course, doing activity-based costing is more time consuming and require higher expertise. In the exam, they may ask you about the advantage of ABC over absorption costing or traditional way of costing. Or they may ask you the definition of absorption or marginal costing. Don't worry about the question on calculating. They don't ask the question on calculating here. They tend to ask about the definition and the difference only. And activity-based costing is very advanced and very difficult. SIP does not provide anything, does not provide very detailed here. But if you want to know more, you may search on Google and research yourself. In the exam, the question tend to be not too complex, and you may have confidence that if you know well the definition and how each costing method is estimated, so you may have confidence in passing the question of this part. Another topic we need to discuss is microeconomics. Some SIP student does not attend college or does not attend college in economics. So this time knowledge may very new to them, and may have some they may have some difficulties in learning this part of knowledge. In macroeconomic, the cornerstone theory of this knowledge is the rule of supply and demand. We have demand curve which is downward and supply curve which is upward, and they meet each other at equilibrium price level. In macroeconomic, sorry. In macroeconomic, they tend to research on each specific category of goods like bread, like egg, like car, etc. An industry, the economic of an industry, and that specific type of goods has some specific supply and demand in specific geographic area. And when we are talking about demand curve and supply curve, we are talking about the demand and supply of that goods in the specific geographic area, like in a country, or of that goods worldwide, or the demand and the supply of that goods worldwide. The question about supply and demand here is quite simple. They ask you about the shape of supply and demand. And the question tend to not ask about the factors that influence the movement of supply and demand. Okay, sorry for that. And in the exam, they ask you about the elasticity of supply, elasticity of demand. What is elasticity? When I am saying that an item is inelastic, it means that that goods had quite stable demand, while the price is fluctuating, like the price of gasoline or the price of fuel. We know that the price for is rising worldwide, but the demand is not very changing. Normally, we see the demand here. We see the demand curve here. Normally, when the price is changing, like pricing, the quantity demand also change. When the price is higher, the demand is dropping. But for inelastic demand, when the price is changing or falling, the demand is not changing as much as the change in price. This happens due to the basic needs of the population. Like you know that the fuel price around the world is rising, but the demand for fuel is not changing much because everyone needs moving. Every logistic company needs moving, and so the demand for fuel, for crude oil, is not changing much. So that is known as inelastic demand. And during the exam, they may ask you some basic question on elastic and inelastic, like the definition of elasticity, or what is the true statement, or if this statement is true on elastic or inelastic demand. And in the exam about microeconomic, the question tends to focus on two things. First, the rule of supply and demand, and second, elasticity of demand. Sorry, actually, I need to say about three areas. And the third is a different type of market. Yeah, I see a rising hand from SIP 20101. Okay. Yeah. Could you turn on the micro or chat and let me know your concern.
Okay, so like I wanted to ask about the elastic, and can you bring back the
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. So what you're saying about elastic demand is that there isn't much of a change in the price for elastic demand, but then the quantity of demand becomes high, right?
No, actually, it's okay. That's right. In elastic demand, normally elastic demand, when the price is changing, also the quantity of demand is changing as much.
No, like I'm not talking about the unitary one. I'm talking about the elastic demand, the fourth one.
Okay, the fourth one.
Yes.
Okay. When we are saying about the fourth one and the fifth one, we are saying about some impossible scenario, like in perfectly in perfectly elastic demand, the demand fluctuating while the price is very stable. It does not rising or falling depend on the quantity of demand. This scenario is very extreme. And for elastic demand, the price is the demand curve is almost horizontal. And when there are big jump in the demand, there's no big jump in the price. It means that for the item, the supply is quite stable, and you may asking for more while the price is not changing much. You want to ask more about this?
No, it's fine. I guess I understood.
Okay, that's good. We see the graph of the fourth one and the fifth one. The fifth one is very ideal. We may have increase or decrease of demand due to seasonal change. Like in summer, you may want more ice cream, may want to have more ice, or you may want to consume the more electricity due to you may have to run air conditioning. And although the change in demand is very clear, but the price is very stable because there are plenty of supply. The supply is limitless. But this scenario in real life is very unrealistic. And in the exam, again, they tend to ask about inelastic demand rather than elastic demand. The final parts of microeconomic. So final part of microeconomic is about the different types of market in the economy. We have, and the book introduced four structures, four types structure for market. We have pure competition or perfect competition where there are many seller and many buyer, and the product is is completely undifferentiated, and any buyer and any seller can go and come at ease. On the other hand, we have another extreme, another extreme point. In monopoly market, there is only one seller, and there are still many buyers. There are no close substitute. and there are very high barrier to entry. In that time market, the seller has tremendous power, and they may extort the market by fetching a high price on the buyer. Close to monopoly market, we have oligopoly. There are some few seller and high barrier to entry. And these seller, though there are very few, they don't have many differentiated products. This time market is very common. We may see in our country like there are a few number of mobile carrier in your country. There are a few banks in your country, few brand of bank in your country. That is oligopoly. And the question here tends to focus on what buyer should do. What buyer should do in these market structures. For example, in monopoly market, if the buyer has to purchase from monopoly market, what they should do? This may be reviewed by reading in the chronologic matrix. Or there are some other question on the purpose of regulation on monopoly and oligopoly. The purpose here is very simple. The state or the government want to limit the power of the oligopoly and monopoly to avoid them, to prevent them from distorting the market. Okay, that's all about the time market because it's not very long and there are not many questions on this topic. So before we moving into chapter 3, I want to have a quick recap on other issues like place, time, and method of negotiation. In the study guide, you may see different method of negotiation like via email, via phone, via video conferencing, via face-to-face. And each time will be appropriate for some scenario, while it inappropriate for the other. And the question here tend to on the method of negotiation, like when we are saying we are negotiating about some kind of small product, then can it be done over phone, or can it be done over face-to-face meeting? And there are other questions on the place of the negotiation, like the advantage and the disadvantage of hosting a negotiation at your office or at the supplier premise or at the neutral premise, at a third party premise like at a hotel or something else. This type of question is very simple, and you may use your common sense to answer. Okay, before moving into chapter 3, I would like to take a cup of water. My throat is very dry. Wait me a few minutes before I come back. Okay, let's come back to chapter 3. In chapter 3, we go through the stages of negotiation, the type question may use in those stages, and tactic as well as other techniques in negotiation. And finally, we look at how to learn and improve from the previous negotiation. Here I list all the stages of negotiation. In the exam, they may ask you what to do or the purpose, or often what to do in the stage of in the certain stage of negotiation with scenario. So you have to look at the book and study what the parties do in those stages. And on the other hand, there are some questions that they describe a scenario, and you have to decide what stage are they in. Are they in that scenario? Again, the secret here is to understand the stages of the negotiation. For example, in opening, we actually just breaking the ice for discussion. Then come to testing, we testing the hypothesis before going into proposing and before going into proposing and demanding for exchange. Yeah, I see a rising hand from Tambaswa. Sorry, I will ask you to unmute. Hello, can you type your concern in the chat? I cannot unmute you. Okay, let's continue. I'm saying that the stages of negotiation can be a part of the exam, and you have to know about what the parties do and what can be asked in each stage of negotiation. It's quite straightforward and make many sense in these stages. So you may need to have some scenario, and you may search for some scenario in the on the internet and see that what they are going through according to SIP. That is a way to practicing the skills before going to the exam. Another part of the exam is type question in negotiation. At least here there are 4 types of questions, and in the exam they may ask you about what is the purpose of each type question, like what is the purpose of closed question. Before that, we have to understand what is the format of each question and what are their purpose. For example, open question is very clear. We asking the question with the WH, like what, where, how, which, when, etc. Closed question is like yes, no question. Do you confirm this, or are you agreeing with this? Probing question is similar to open question, but probing question has a distinctive feature. Open question Open question tend to be used in breaking the ice in the beginning of the negotiation. Probing question, on the other hand, is not used to breaking the ice, but it used to investigate more facts from the other party. First of all, the probing question look like this. Can you tell me more about your product? That is a probing question. We investigate, we discover more facts from the other party by using this type of question. And finally, hypothetical question is the kind of question that you set up a condition and ask them whether what they would do in that condition. This type of question may start with if. If we do this, what will you do? This type of question, this type of question is used to test the hypothesis, to test the scenario, to test the reaction from the other party. Close question is used to confirming something, to close something. And probing question is used to discover facts and used to investigate the other party. Push and pull techniques is a very important topic in L4M5 exam. It's important can be compared with integrative and distributive approach. The question on push and pull techniques is very similar to those of integrative and distributive, like they asking you the feature of push and pull. So what is push and what is pull technique? Push and pull are the way to convince or influence the other party to do what you want. Push is like convincing, is like threatening the other party to do, like using coercive power or using the logic to convince, like which you must do this because something. That is push, using the logic, using the threat. And on the other hand, pull is not using threat, but you use the influence. You instead of forcing them, you use the technique like influence, like empathy, to have to make them do what you want. They may see that they have choice, but actually you are manipulating, and it's a word, manipulate is not too harsh for you. You are actually influence them into making decision in favor of you, in your favor. And regarding push technique, we have hardcore tactics like using threat, like good cop, bad cop, like take it or leave it, like snow job. There are some techniques you may not seen in the book, like snow job. Snow job is to bombard the other party with a lot of information and force them to be confused. And when they're confused, you may convince them to do what you want, like give them a solution to that confusion. Or you may use threat to force the other party to listen what you want. It's very is very compatible with push technique. On the other hand, in the book, they don't tell much about the pull technique as well as the influencing technique. So I would like to introduce some of the techniques like framing and reframing and anchoring and finally pacing and leading. Framing, as its name suggests, framing is to redefine something that in favor of your decision or in favor of your choice. For example, when we are saying about saying about lowering the price that you purchase from the supplier. You are not saying that this will benefit you, but you have to reframe that this action will benefit the supplier by increase the quantity of purchase from the supplier. Also, it also increase the overall profit of the supplier. By framing that, you may influence the supplier to listen, and they may agree to lower the price for you. Anchoring, on the other hand, is a technique that you make an impression of setting a price or a target. During the discussion, you are repeatedly referring to that anchor. You see that the anchor is used in the ship, and it makes the ship stop. And by using anchoring, you are referring to something that repeatedly appear in the discussion, and by some chance the other party may agree to that because they are influenced by anchoring. And finally, pacing and leading is very hard technique. It's very hard to master, and it's extremely effective in influencing. Pacing literally means that we keep at the right speed. But in this context, pacing means that you are showing empathy. You are showing that you are on the same boat and with the other party. And based on the empathy, based on the sameness between you and the other party, you may lead them to your solution. For example, the seller may complaining about the rising price of the rising cost of doing business. You may pacing them by showing empathy, by showing that we are also experiencing the same experience, on guys experiencing the same problem. And after that, after getting their empathy, you are leading them into your solution. Like you're showing, like we are experiencing the same problem, but we are doing this to recover, to attract the customer while keeping the cost stable, and you are offering your solution. That is how pacing and leading work. Pacing and leading is very hard, and it requires a lot of skill, like listening, like observing, and offering a creative solution. And this technique is hard, but it's highly effective in negotiation, as I can receive from some research. So in the book, they don't introduce anything about framing, reframing, anchoring, pacing, and leading. But in the exam, they may ask you a simple question on influencing technique, and you know what to choose. This revision class is delivered freely by the government team, and remember to support us by purchasing our tests on questions on Udemy. Currently, we are running a promotion by offering $9.99 per exam, per module. So if you apply the coupon code, we trust you without spaces and okay. The price will be only $9.99. For now, if you have any question, you may raise your hand and ask us here. Yeah, where I see a question. I see a rising hand from Mohammed Hassan Abdullahi. Can you turn on the mic and speak directly to me?
Yes, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you for this.
Yeah. Can you speak louder? I hear that you speak very small.
Yes, brother. Thank you very much for this marvelous presentation. I would like to ask you to go for us just a brief of breastplate in cost.
It's still very small. I cannot hear you. If you feel that your side has technical difficulty, I think that you should try in the chat. I cannot hear anything from you.
Yes, brother. Do you hear me now?
Quite small, but yeah, I can try to hear.
Yeah, brother. I would like to ask you to price plateau diagram in the cost. Thank you.
Hello, Mohammed. Are you there? Hello.
Yes, brother, I'm there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I allow all you to unmute and instead of raising hand. Okay. Again, can you speak your concern?
Yes, brother, I would like to ask to go for you to go for us brief price plateau diagram in costing. Thank you. Do you hear me?
Do you want to ask about the costing technique or costing method?
No. In price plateau diagram, price plateau. Let me type this.
Okay, what diagram? Price.
Yeah.
Market diagram. Or price. Yeah. Here, I'm here. Okay. Price plateau. Okay. Yeah. The elasticity of demand, is it? What do you want to ask here, Mohammed?
Yeah, brother, I would like to ask the differences in the warm and cold, tough and easy. And giving an example in the price plateau.
Okay. Yeah. Is this kind of knowledge is quite ambiguous to any student who is not familiar with it? We have five model here. Perfectly inelastic, elastic, unitary elastic, elastic and perfectly elastic demand. When I'm saying that something is inelastic, and I mean that their price is not quite affected by the, sorry, their demand is not quite affected by the rising or falling price. For example, as a rule of supply and demand, for example, like the Gucci bag is a kind of luxury brand and luxury item. You don't need it to sustain your life. And when the price is falling, like they are running a promotion, there may be more people running to each store and ordering a bag. But when the price is rising due to something like the rising price of the litter, then people may come fewer people may come to their store and purchase one Gucci bag. That type of goods, that type of item is initially elastic demand. If the demand rising or falling depend on the rising and falling price. But there's some type of demand that is inelastic. The demand may change, but it change minimally compared to the change in the price. For example, the price of gasoline, the price of fuel is skyrocketing in my country. It doubled in the last 6 months, but the demand for gasoline, demand fuel is not changing much because everyone need to go to the street. Everyone want to move, and every companies need to move their goods and their passengers. So the demand for fuel is not changing, though there are some people like me. I switch from going on motorcycle on riding on a bicycle. I move to by traveling by riding a bus. But the case like me is very limited, and most people still purchasing gasoline or fuel to or run their bike, to run their motorcycle, or to run their car. So the demand for gasoline or fuel is inelastic. When the price is rising almost double in the last 6 months, the demand for it still largely unchanged. It changed, but very limited, very minimally. And in perfectly inelastic demand, this is only about theoretic theory. It's only happened in the book. The demand is unchanged even when the price changing. Perfectly inelastic demand has a graph as a vertical bar here. On the other hand, there are some cases that demand is changing, but the price is not fluctuating much. Due to, as I said before, the supply is very plenty, so the demand does not affect much about the price. So that case is perfectly or the elastic demand or elastic demand. For example, when we are in summer and in my country it's very hot, it's often about 38 or 39 degrees Celsius at noon or in the afternoon. I had to turn on my air conditioning, and the price of electricity in my country is not changing much because there are a lot of supply of electricity here. When I turn on and I use more electricity, the price of the unit price is not changing much. You may see here. This happened due to the subsidy from the government, due to the plentiness of demand, of supply. So I hope that my explanation have you satisfied you. Do you want to ask more about this? don't worry about the exam. The exam does not ask about elastic or perfectly elastic. They often ask about inelastic demand. And the question here tend to be in yes or no or true and false format. Like they ask you about this statement, and they ask that whether this statement true or whether this statement is correct. And the question here tend not to very complex. Don't worry about that. Okay, Mohammed showing us some here. I think he's satisfied with my answer. Any other people, any other person has any other question? If I receive no other question, I can finish my revision here, and my college will notify you when our recording is available on YouTube. We will upload this recording on YouTube and send to the participants. Thank you for taking your time, and I hope that all of you will pass July exam, and we may see each other in other revision class. Thank you for attending, and have a nice day.